Right Side News, bringing you the right news for the right side. I'm Jim Hoel, and I am your voice. Thank you and good evening. Welcome to our continuing coverage of the Hoel Report Investigates. Last time we talked about the Russian dossier and the salacious allegations that were made in that and how it turned out to be completely false. Well, tonight we're going to delve more into that and get into more details as we continue our investigations into these stories. Tonight, with collaboration by Elizabeth Voss of Disobedient Media, we have a report here. Forensicator's analysis supports Assange's statements on the DNC and Podesta's emails. This is via Elizabeth Voss of Disobedient Media and by the Right Side Network staff. Disobedient Media has closely followed the work of the Forensicator, whose analysis has shed much light on the publications by the Guccifer 2.0 persona for about over a year and a half. In view of the more recent work published by the Forensicator regarding potential media collusion, Guccifer 2.0, we are inclined to revisit an interview given by WikiLeaks Editor-in-Chief Julian Assange in August of 2016, prior to the publication of the Podesta emails in October, and up into the November and up to the 2016 election itself. During this interview, partially transcribed below, Assange makes a number of salient points on the differentiation between the thousands of pristine emails that WikiLeaks received and those which had surfaced in other U.S. outlets by that date. I believe he was talking about the mainstream media. Assange does not name, and I want to make this clear, Julian Assange does not name the Guccifer 2.0 persona directly throughout the interview. He does not name multiple outlets which publicized Guccifer 2.0 and his documents. So, the significance of revisiting Assange's statements to the degree which is most significant, and the most significant claim that is corroborated or paralleled by the Forensicator's analysis, this is of enhanced import in light of allegations by Robert Mueller, the special counsel, not to mention the legacy media. Despite a total absence of evidence, the Guccifer 2.0 persona was WikiLeaks' source of the DNC and Podesta emails. So apparently, that's what Robert Mueller alleges, with no proof, mind you. This author previously discussed the possibility that Julian Assange's current isolation might stem in part from the likelihood that upon expulsion from the embassy, Julian Assange could provide evidential proof that the DNC emails and the Podesta emails published by WikiLeaks were not sourced from Russia or backed by the Kremlin in any way whatsoever, all without disclosing the identity of their true source. So apparently WikiLeaks and Julian Assange has made that claim. Going further into that, Julian Assange told RT, in the U.S. media, there has been a deliberate conflation between the DNC leaks, which is what we've been publishing, and the DNC hacks of the U.S. Democratic Party's mainframes, which have occurred over the last 2 years. By their own admission, in the last 2 years, by their own admission, what Hillary Clinton is attempting to do is to conflate Julian Assange and WikiLeaks' publication of pristine emails. No one in the Democratic Party had argued that a single email was out of place or not completely valid. And I believe I mentioned it before, and to keep something in mind, WikiLeaks has a over decade-long track record of 100% accuracy in reporting. That is always something to keep in mind. That is better than any major news organization in the world. And that's just a point that I wanted to make. Moving on. So, by their own admission, the Democratic Party has not been able to say that any email or any pristine document that was released by WikiLeaks in the run-up to the 2016 election was false, altered in any way, or it was not completely valid. That hasn't been done. The head of the DNC, at the time, the head of the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, wound up resigning as a result of this investigation. So we had the head of the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, her resignation was brought on by this. Going further into that, whatever hacking had occurred of the DNC or other political organizations in the United States by a range of actors. In the middle, we have something which is the publication by other media organizations or of information reportedly from the DNC, and that seems to be the case. That's the publication of Word documents and PDFs published by The Hill, by Gawker, by the Smoking Gun. All of these are a completely separate batch of documents compared to the over 20,000 pristine emails that were released by WikiLeaks. However, there were other ones that were reported. In this separate batch of documents released by these other media organizations, there are claims that in the metadata, someone has done a document to PDF conversion, and in some cases, the language of the computer that was used for that conversion was Russian. So that's the circumstantial evidence that some Russian was involved. Or someone who wanted to make it look like Russia was involved. So those are those two possibilities. So with that being said, with these other media organizations, that was not the case for the material that WikiLeaks released. The Hillary Clinton hack campaign has a serious problem in trying to figure out how to counterspin our publication. Because the emails are unarguable, there's an attempt to bring in a meta-story, and the meta-story is, did some hacker obtain these emails? Okay, well, people have suggested that, and there's evidence that the DNC has been hacked. For some reason, they refused to turn over their mainframes to the FBI. Why that is, we still don't know. But like it says right here in this report, it has been argued that yes, indeed, the meta story is that some hacker did obtain these emails and that the DNC was hacked. I'm not at all surprised it's been hacked. I believe this is a quote. I'm not at all surprised it's been hacked. It's been hacked many times over the last 2 years. Our sources said that the DNC security is like Swiss cheese. Now, Hillary Clinton went on to say, untruthfully, which is no surprise, that she knows who the source of our emails are. Now, she didn't quite say our emails. She's playing some games because there have been other publications and misinformation by various outlets of different documents, not emails, but documents. So we have, separate from the various DNC or RNC hacks that have occurred over the years, and who's done that, the source we know, the source. We know who the source is. It's the Democratic National Committee itself. And our sources who gave us these materials and other pending materials to us, these are all different questions. The core assertion made by Julian Assange in the above transcribed segment of his 2016 interview with RT is the differentiation between WikiLeaks publications from the altered documents released by Guccifer 2.0 after being pre-released to the U.S. media outlets as referenced by Assange. This final point is one that is corroborated by the Forensicator's analysis, and one which it seems much of the public has yet to entirely digest. Disobedient Media previously wrote regarding the Forensicator's publication of Did Guccifer 2 Plant His Russian Fingerprints? Ars Technica found Russian fingerprints in a PDF posted by Gawker the previous day. Apparently both Gawker and the Smoking Gun had received pre-release copies of Guccifer 2.0's first batch of documents, and then Guccifer 2.0 went on to post them later on his WordPress.com blog site. Although neither Gawker nor TSG reported on these Russian error messages, some readers noticed them and mentioned them in their own social media forums. Ars Technica was likely the first media outlet to ever cover those Russian fingerprints. The Forensicator's analysis cannot enlighten us to the ultimate source of WikiLeaks releases at this present time. It is the Mueller indictment itself, which actually rules out Guccifer 2.0 as WikiLeaks source, as noted by the journalist Michael Thau, whose article is very much worth reading in its entirety in order to grasp the full impact, and this is important. Michael Thau, Thau, and we're going to link that in the description, but his article is worth reading in its entirety in order to grasp the full impact of the contradictions present within the indictment itself. Essentially, Thau points out that Mueller claims that Guccifer 2.0 was first successful in sending a file to WikiLeaks on July 14th. Over a month after Assange's announced WikiLeaks' possession of emails related to Hillary Clinton, clearly from a different source. On June 12th, as broadcast on United Kingdom National Television, journalist Adam Carter, who has also extensively confronted the many flaws of the indictment, it is critically important, as Assange indicated, to differentiate between the files published by Guccifer 2.0 and those released by WikiLeaks itself. They're two entirely separate entities. So I don't know if it was just both of them releasing, hacked it, who knows. But the point that he's trying to make is that WikiLeaks and Guccifer 2.0 are two entirely separate entities. So that was broadcast on the United Kingdom National Television. We went on to say that none of the altered documents with supposed Russian fingerprints published by Guccifer 2.0 appear in any of WikiLeaks' publications. It is also worth noting that though Assange's interview took place before the publication of the Podesta email collection, the allegations of a Russian hack based on Guccifer 2.0's publication were ultimately contradicted by a DNC official, as reported by the Associated Press. Disobedient Media wrote, "Ultimately, it is the DNC's claim that they were breached by Russian hackers who stole the Trump opposition report, which directly belies their allegation because the document did not come from the DNC, but from John Podesta's emails himself." Once again, the very document on which the initial Russian hack allegations were based could not have been taken from the DNC. And it was contained in the Podesta emails, which at that time of Assange's RT interview had not yet been published. Disobedient Media also noted in relation to the Forensicator's media mishaps report, the very fact that the email to which the Trump opposition report was attached was later published in the Podesta email collection by WikiLeaks does not prove that Guccifer 2.0 and WikiLeaks shared a source on the document. However, it does suggest that either the DNC, the operators of the Guccifer 2.0 persona, or both parties had access to Podesta's emails. This raises questions as to why the DNC would interpret the use of this particular file as evidence of any Russian penetration or hacking of the DNC. Now, this in itself creates a massive contradiction within the DNC's narrative. That it does not materially change Assange's assertion that the pristine emails obtained by WikiLeaks should not be conflated with the altered documents published by Guccifer 2.0 as the WikiLeaks publication of the WikiLeaks publication of the Podesta emails contain none of the altercations shown in the version of the documents published by Guccifer 2.0. Although no establishment media outlet has reported on this point, when reviewing the evidence at hand, and especially the work of the Forensicator, it is evident that the Guccifer 2.0 persona never actually published a single email. The persona published documents and even screenshots themselves. Thus again, Guccifer 2.0's works are critically different from the DNC and Podesta, both email publications by WikiLeaks. There's also a chart here that we'll post, which goes into the timeline of events relative to Guccifer 2.0, including the date specific documents were published. This writer previously opined on the apparent invulnerability of the Russiagate saga to factual refutation. One cannot blame the public for such narrative immorality, as the establishment-backed press has made every single effort to confuse and conflate the altercations made to documents published by Guccifer 2.0 and by WikiLeaks' Julian Assange. One can only hope, however, that this reminder of their distinct state will help raise public skepticism of a narrative based on absolutely no evidence whatsoever. It is also especially important to reconsider Julian Assange's statements and texts in light of his ongoing isolation from the outside world, which has prevented him from commenting further on the infinite array of subjects, including Guccifer 2.0 and the Russian hacking saga. Winston S. Contributed to the content of this report. So that brings us to a conclusion as on this report regarding the DNC hacks, leaks, and all that entailed. So hopefully we were able to clear some of the error in that one. So the bottom line, taking away from that, is that WikiLeaks and Goosefer 2.0 are entirely separate entities. There is no evidence that they have ever worked together or ever even tried to do anything to work together at all. So that's one point they're trying to hit home. As I believe, and as I mentioned before, this is a story that still has not gone away, and that's why it does still warrant attention. So that's about all the time we have for tonight. Thank you for joining us for our Wednesday edition of the Hoel Report Investigates. For Right Side News, I'm Jim Hoel. I am your voice. Have a good evening.